Great to be back from Huntington Beach last weekend. Like a few days ago, we're standing on the competition floor in California at Huntington Beach at this quite large CrossFit festival called Wodapalooza. Now, this last January, we were merely spectators at the Miami version of this. And this year we weren't just watching, but we were also sponsors and competitors. So Vinny, Josh, and myself, we signed up for a 3-person team, throwing ourselves into these really difficult workouts that are designed to humble, well, even the most seasoned CrossFit athletes. And it was everything all at once. It was camaraderie, it was adrenaline, it was nerves, it was self-doubt, it was elation. And in between those peaks and valleys, there were these quiet moments of, well, whether you wondered if you belonged out there at all. Sort of a perfect laboratory for the human mind under stress. And I've always believed that the CrossFit gym is sort of a microcosm of the market. The parallels and the analogies are everywhere. It's discipline, it's delayed gratification, it's staying focused on the plan when your heart rate spikes and everyone around you seems to be moving faster. How quickly a single thought can manifest into something real. Negative or positive. You miss a rep and suddenly your confidence, it wavers. You let it snowball and you're done. But you can also catch yourself. You can breathe, you can reassess, you can re-engage. You can actually find another gear that you didn't even know you had. And that's the beauty of controlling your thoughts and emotions. In this past weekend, actually, we talked about it. It reminded me of a story of a client, CrossFit Games champion Jayson Hopper, who told me recently, a story that he told me recently. You know, he had entered this year, the 2025 CrossFit Games a few months ago in peak form. Throughout the multi-day competition, everything more or less was falling into place for him. Until the final day. And it was the second to last event that combined power snatches with a shuttle run, Olympic lift with a shuttle run. He started and he was in first place. He was moving through it pretty rapidly. But at the very end, he missed a few key lifts. You know, competitors that he was in front of during that workout passed him. And his lead shrank. And when he walked onto the floor, he was in control, solidly in first. And when he walked off, what seemed like an imminent CrossFit Games win, the whole competition, it was suddenly in jeopardy. And he was fired up. He was frustrated. He was emotional. And his coach met him as he was coming off the floor and immediately didn't sugarcoat it. You know, that didn't go as planned. He said something along those lines. But he also didn't let Jayson spiral. He reminded him of his preparation, his capabilities, the hours and the days and the weeks of somewhat brutal training that got him there. There was one event left. Jayson gathered himself, came back for the finality, and put on a spectacular show, a demonstration of fitness. And he ended up winning the CrossFit Games and to be crowned the fittest athlete in the world for 2025. And I just love that story because it's the essence of what we see in investors every day. Everyone eventually and somewhat frequently misses a lift, so to speak. Everyone eventually faces a moment when emotions get the best of them and they feel like everything's slipping away. Their progress, their discipline, their sense of control, those emotions can set us off on destructive paths. And our job as advisors, really helping people make great long-term decisions about how to deploy their hard-earned capital. Our job is to act like Jayson's coach. We can either handicap people or empower them. And the choice is always ours. All our facts are from the past. All of our investment decisions play out in an unknown future. And the future never feels more unknowable than it does in the moment, in the now. And that's why it's so important to understand something that I have long agreed with. Forecasting market and economic conditions is virtually impossible. I've made two observations about that as it applies to our work. If forecasting we're saying is impossible, perhaps we should all stop making them. Stop making these forecasts if you are, or certainly stop listening to them. And number two, none of us are investing for right now. None of us long-term investors. All of us are investing for decades, maybe even generations. A 60-year-old today, for example, life expectancy, at least one of the spouses, into their 90s. So you're talking 3, maybe 4 more decades. Now you add on to that the multi-generational aspect of their goals. We're talking about much, much longer time periods, 60 years, 70 years. So the last thing an investor with a lifetime horizon, the last thing they should be thinking about is right now. Get out of the right now. It should be clear to us as advisors that our first job is to help people get out of their heads about what is going on today. And the faster and the more effectively we can do that by shutting down the right now conversations, the more we can do our real job, which is practicing rationality during uncertainty. And given that we cannot predict what's going to happen, the question becomes, well, how should we plan? Based on the certainty that the future will be different from the past. History shows us that there will be an endless series of challenges. The sooner we can turn the discussion back to planning, the more pitfalls we can avoid and the more good that we can do. And my default method for this, at least, is pretty simple. Take clients back to the time before right now was front and center, right? Before the focus was on what happens to be or what seems to be happening and causing grief in the economy and the markets in the now. Take them back to when we established the plan, when we talked about their most cherished financial goals. At no point in that discussion did somebody say, well, my goal is to control interest rates in my portfolio, or my goal is to avoid all downturns, or my goal is to outguess politics, right? People don't say that. Most people don't. When we talk about goals, most articulated differently, but most folks talk about living a dignified, independent retirement. They talk about being able to fund their kids or their grandkids' education. They talk about the importance of leaving a legacy. Those goals haven't changed, right? Economic adversity doesn't change them. And within the planning process, we identified the asset class that historically had the greatest probability, has the greatest probability of helping us get our clients to the goals in the time available. Diversified ownership of the world's greatest companies. We've always known the relentless uptrend in equities would be frequently and temporarily interrupted. And we planned for it. We planned for a decline of 1 in every 5 years or so, where a third of the portfolio appears to disappear temporarily. We talked about having cash reserves or the ability to add to the portfolio during downturns if you're younger and you happen to be in the accumulation phase. We didn't just mention these scenarios, we planned for them. And what we've done here is really important. Number one, we've removed from the discussion any sense of urgency about what's happening or might be happening right now. We've dismissed forecasting as any relevance to long-term investors. We've refocused the discussion on the plan. And number four, we've reaffirmed that if equities were the best way to reach their goals before, they still are, despite the interruptions. So as we move toward the close of this year, for example, and beyond that, there will be a time, whether it's next month, next year, when it becomes clear that we're in the middle of another economic contraction of some degree, right? And no matter how deep the drawdown or not, in the now, right? In that particular point in time, right at that moment when we're in the middle of it, whatever we're in the middle of, it will feel difficult. It will feel emotional. It may even feel horrific. And I'm never going to be the one forecasting, right? As we've talked about, and certainly not saying, hey, this is going to be a really quick recovery. But history shows that when the markets do turn back around, the recovery is pretty sharp, upward. People become a little less petrified over time. Confidence slowly returns. And during these times, it's critical that we aren't dragged into another round of discussions about the market. We keep the focus relentlessly on the plan. We don't enable people, for example, to get back into equities because prices are going back up. People should be invested in equities for one reason and one reason only, because it's the only way they can sufficiently reach the goals in the long-term plan. Otherwise, we risk being stuck in the right now for the rest of our careers as advisors. That's what Jayson Hopper's coach did on that Sunday afternoon in Albany. He reminded Jayson of his preparation, his plan, his training. What got him there will get him through. He didn't give him a new strategy or a new forecast. He simply gave him the gift of perspective and rationality under pressure. And that's our job as advisors, not to predict or the panic, but to coach, to stand on the sideline while our clients are on the floor, on the competition floor, and to remind them of their preparation that got them there and to guide them back into their own strengths when the moment feels weakest. Because everyone misses a lift, everyone. The question is, what happens next? As always, go be relentless, everyone. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk soon.